Daren Stoltzfus delivers the latest sports news from Charleston and around the country here at Channel 4 on the weekends with Ashley Blackstone and Sonya Stevens. In this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups, I sit down with them one-on-one. Daren, may I say, it's been a busy time for you.
A little bit, yeah. I think I've been here a little more than 2 years, and it's been a whirlwind the whole 2 years. So.
And so what is it like to be Daren Stoltzfus, a sports journalist?
I guess it's a good thing. I don't know. You'd have to ask. Oh, you are asking me. No, it's busy. I think I spend a lot of time here. I spend a lot of time out in the low country running around, shooting games, meeting coaches. We travel a lot. We go to a lot of games. So I guess the one word I would say is busy, which isn't always a good thing. I'd like to be able to slow down a little bit. I was talking about taking a vacation. That'd be nice, but we'll go with busy.
That's awesome. Let me start this interview with the obvious, because today it's really a somber day here in the Low Country. Pat Conroy was just, sent, he's resting in peace now. His funeral was down on Ladies Island. And I'm wondering, when you think of Pat Conroy, what goes to your mind?
Obviously, the Citadel is the first thing that comes to mind. And I know the books that he wrote about them, Words of Discipline pops in immediately. But I know his roots to Charleston, this city meant so much to him and still means so. He meant so much to this city. And I think Ed Conroy, the old Citadel coach, and the stories that he wrote in his book about the Citadel, My Losing Season, I think was the title. I think deep roots. I think of the old trees when you're lining the drive down to Kiowa with the Spanish moss. That's what comes to mind with me for Pat Conroy, which may not make sense, but to me it does. And just old Charleston. That's kind of he resonates with that. And I know today is a sad day, but I know from hearing what his family said too, it's kind of a happy day too, if you can put it in that context.
Celebrating life.
Exactly, and I think he had a life definitely worth celebrating, and what he did for this city is pretty cool.
Yeah. And someone that really the world has their eyes on right now is Peyton Manning. He had an emotional press conference yesterday where he retired after almost 20 years in the NFL?
18 years in the NFL. Yeah, I went to Tennessee, so you probably know. It's like I joke, it's contractually obligated with my diploma that I have to be a Peyton Manning fan. But even if it wasn't, it's hard not to cheer for somebody like that. He's been so fun to watch, so successful, but he's also carried himself well. Obviously, there's some things that have come out in recent history that we don't really know what happened. Everybody makes poor decisions, or not everybody. Some people make poor decisions when they're in college, but what he's done on and off the field as an adult in the NFL has been fun to watch, and I'll miss watching him play football, but to see him win a Super Bowl and go out, that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Let's walk down memory lane to March 5th. Scotty Iceberg said the following on Twitter, quote, "This close for CFC. This close. Season comes to a close here in Baltimore." Tell me, after Coach Earl Grant really lost Canyon Barry during the earlier season, how close were they?
Well, at the beginning of the season, they lost one of their best new players. Grant Rayner was injured in a scrimmage against Clemson, so that hurt. Then they lose Joe Cheeley before the season starts. Then Canyon Barry goes out. He was their leading scorer, averaging close to 20 points a game. When they win 17 games without three of their top contributors, that's really impressive. I think coming into this year, we didn't really know what to expect after last year. Earl took over with 2 months before the season. They really struggled. And I thought, looking at the CAA, this is a league that I know from my time in Virginia, this is a league dominated by older players, and he had so many young players. They were almost 500 in the league. They went 8-10. They lost their last couple games in conference play. But yeah, they lost. That shot by Jarrell Brantley would have tied it up, probably sent it to overtime. They could have easily won. They lost the team that won the tournament. So I'm really excited to see what they do next year. I think him having 2 full seasons plus the off seasons and really bringing in, he's known for his recruiting, bringing in some really good players. There's a kid out of the Hammond School in Columbia that's coming that he's a big-time recruit. I'm really looking forward to seeing. They were so close this year, but I think they may get to play in a postseason tournament. I'm not sure CBI or the CIT or the Vegas Invitational, one of the lower tier tournaments. But going into next year, certainly if you're a Cougars fan, I think you got a lot to look forward to.
And I ran into Earl last week on the market in front of Marcus Fidelli, and I joked to him. I said, "You're going to be named Coach of the Year."
Yeah, he was close. I don't remember who was the CAA Coach of the Year. I thought he did the best job of coaching in the league, and I know Kevin Keats at Wilmington. They were picked 6th and did win the tournament. They were the 2 seed, tied for the league title. He did a great job too. But what Earl did this year, I was not expecting that at all. A lot of questions were, could they even score? I mean, their defense was great, but could they score enough points to win? Well, one game they scored 40 points and they still won. So he's done a great job.
And you spoke about Columbia a second ago. Let's go up to I-26 because, as you know, the Gamecocks women basketball are SEC champions again. What is it like to see that happen again?
It's crazy. When I was at Tennessee, they won back-to-back national championships for women's basketball. And Knoxville is kind of a mecca for women's sports. So a lot of people don't appreciate women's basketball. Sometimes I'm one of them, but I can appreciate what Dawn Staley has done. Yeah. And to look at how far they've come from when there were probably a couple thousand in the stands in her first couple games coaching to now they're selling out Colonial Life Arena.
Yes.
They have one loss this entire season. It's the undefeated #1 team in the country. The question still is UConn still that much better than them? I mean, to lose to them 2 years in a row and to lose to them by 20-plus points at home this year, that's got to be tough. But they're coming off a Final Four trip.
Right.
They did something that's only been done once in the history of the SEC, which was go undefeated and win the championship. They've got a lot to play for. But like she said, I think after they won the championship, it's do or die now. You know, they've got to. I think this is their year if they're going to do it. So it'll be fun to watch.
Andrew Gulak, he's going to Houston.
Yeah, he was a great player for the college, and I know we've talked about Scotty and I have here. You can make a lot of money playing basketball overseas. You know, Chuck Edson was a Pinewood Prep guy. He went overseas and was one of the best players in the world, not in the NBA. He could have played in the NBA, but he wouldn't have been a star. He made a lot of money playing overseas. I think Andrew Godlock's a guy like that he could have just stayed over there and made a lot of money, but now he's on an NBA roster, and I guess that itch to compete at the highest level, that's what the NBA is. So it's always good when you have a college in town. Like for Earl Grant to be able to say, that's what even though he wasn't the coach, obviously, but that's a College of Charleston guy. That's got to help recruiting. You know, it's got to be fun for fans to see that guy in the NBA. So he was definitely a great scorer in the Southern Conference. So it'll be fun to watch him the rest of the way.
Amazement went through the minds of many people last Saturday when this was actually tweeted out by the Post and Courier, quote, biggest names in football in South Carolina, John McKissick, Dabo Sweeney, Will Muschamp in Somerville this evening. What was your state of mind on Saturday night?
That was so cool. I didn't get to go because I had to be here for the 6 o'clock news. The gala started, I believe, at 6. And but getting the video from our photographer and watching them, and I talked to Joe Call yesterday up at Somerville, actually, and talking to him about that event. It was so cool. Just John McKissick is Somerville, and he's kind of like, we did the entire half-hour show on him when he retired. It was so much fun to hear the stories of how many lives he's touched. You know, generations of generations that played football for him. He's there for 63 years. So to see, you know, Dabo Sweeney, who was in the national championship with the Clemson Tigers, for him to, in spring practice, take the time to come to the Low Country to say hey to John McKissick, that's really cool. Will Muschamp said he'd just met McKissick like a week ago. He took time to come down to say, because he is a legend, and he is football coaching in South Carolina. And one of the things that Dabo said that really stood out to me was, you know, we're in the coaching business. It's a people business, and relationships matter, and players matter, and relationships with players matter. And John McKissick kind of personified that, and he really built Somerville. I mean, 63 years, he was the icon. He was the guy. And I think to see him honored like that was really cool. And his line of the night was our photographer asked him, you know, what are your goals now? What are you doing? And he was like, I'm 89. I've done everything. I just want 90. Like, I just want to get to 90. And so, like, on one hand, you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you said that. But, like, that's John McKissick. It's like, he's awesome. And I don't think high school football will ever be like what it was in the heyday, in the 90s when he was winning and the whole town would shut down and go to games. And I don't think there will ever be another coach that does that or that even stays in one place for 63 years, let alone a coach that goes 63 years with 2 losing seasons. 2 losing seasons in 63 years. That's really difficult to do.
Exactly.
So what he's meant to Flowertown is immeasurable.
Yes, indeed. And I was going to ask you, how will Joe Call actually build on that?
I don't know. I think it helps now that he doesn't have that interim tag. You know, he's the actual head coach. So he said part of the thing last year was like, well, you're the head coach, but you're the interim head coach. We don't know if you're going to be around. Do we really need to buy in? And I think changes on the staff have come. It's really his staff and his team now. I know Sawyer Bridges, he was a senior last year for Somerville, played baseball. He decided not to play quarterback. And with John McKissick stepping down 2 months before the season and then Sawyer deciding late to not play quarterback, that really kind of put Joe in a tough spot. But, you know, we said 2 losing seasons in 63 years. Joe had a losing season last year, so that's 3 in 64 years, I guess. So it's going to be tough. The expectations are to win at Somerville, and I think it's different now than it was before. You've got all these schools around that weren't here. Ashley Ridge, Fort Dorchester, both those schools used to be within Somerville High School, so they didn't exist. But it's going to be tough. I think if Joe can do it. He certainly has the fire, and the kids like him, and he's making changes that need to be made. But it's going to be tough, and I think he knows that. But he's not backing down. It'll be they're another team that I'm really interested to see what happens in August.
Describe to me the following one word: Matt Heath.
Fiery. I would say he's a fiery guy. You kind of, if you watch him coach from the stands, that's the only side of him you see. But I would also say his players would probably say compassionate. I think he has a really tight relationship with his players, and they were obviously disappointed when Monty Lee left to go to Clemson. But I think having Matt be named the head coach, they really liked that. I know the pitching staff, especially, they were really pleased. But they definitely were excited to play for him, and he's another guy. Definitely a lot of changes, but one to watch.
Steve Spurrier.
Oh, legend. That's what I would say for him. I grew up in his hometown, Johnson City, Tennessee, and so from knee up, I remember hearing stories about Steve Spurrier, and he went to Science Hill High School, where my sister graduated from. 16 or 20 letters, something ridiculous. Played multiple sports, excelled in all of them. Obviously had the great playing career at Florida, then the coaching career at Florida and South Carolina. Was in the NFL for a couple of years, but longevity, I think of, but just absolute legend. He was so fun to cover the first 2 years. Then obviously last year, 6 games in, calling it quits. But legend. That's the one word that sticks out for me.
The Citadel versus the College with the crosstown rivalry.
Oh, rivalry. That's a cop-out because you just said it. But I also think like Citadel and CSU, I think that's a legitimate rivalry now, especially in football.
Right.
But I think each institution, all three of them have such a different identity. And each person that is associated with that school kind of feels that identity. And it's not a bad thing that they kind of go back and forth. But it's very much of like, this is mine and I want to protect it, and you're in my city and I want to go take it. So definitely think Charleston Southern feels like they're kind of the redheaded stepchild because they're up in North Charleston, and for so long they weren't really a player in any of this. But definitely the College and the Citadel, they go back a long ways. And when they played in the SoCon, they played all the time. So I'm so glad that they still play at least once a year in basketball, and in baseball they do the 2-1, or they play 3 games a year. But I do kind of wish they were still in the same conference. That was a lot of fun to watch them because I grew up watching ETSU when they were in the SoCon, seeing the Citadel and the College play. But, oh, man, deep-rooted rivalry? That's 3 words. But
that's interesting.
But, yeah, I think it's a lot of – that's fun to watch.
I was going to say, Daren Stoltzfus in one word.
Oh, layered. Can we do that?
Sure.
Like an onion. No, I think it's I don't know that anybody can like adequately describe yourself because I think we can go deep here. There's a way that you see yourself and there's a way that everybody else sees you. And I don't know how everybody else sees me, but I know how I see. And I think constantly, like, my goal is to be the same person everywhere. I want to be what you see on TV when I'm presenting sports or when I'm talking to you. That's just who I am. Now, obviously, I have good days and bad days and mood swings and everything else that goes along with being human. But my goal is consistency.
Yes.
But obviously, since I'm flawed and human, not consistent. So layers.
Okay. Sure, that makes sense to me.
Peel back the layers.
There you go.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Well, Daren Stoltzfus, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks, Quintin. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Happy to do it.
Thank you.